You know, pretty much every building you have ever loved, it actually began as a highly curated manipulation. I mean, before a single brick is even laid, an architect has to convince a room full of people to spend, like, millions of dollars.
Right.
And they have to do it using nothing but a few pieces of flat paper.
It is a massive leap of faith. We look at architectural drawings, and we just assume they are these neutral, objective maps of reality. We think, a line on a page is simply a wall in the real world.
Yeah, but that's not true at all.
Not even close. The terrain between an idea in an architect's mind and a physical structure is incredibly treacherous.
And that terrain is exactly what we're exploring today. And our mission is to uncover how architects translate invisible ideas into physical reality through, well, the secret persuasive language of drawing. Because designing a space is completely different from communicating that space.
Oh, absolutely. Architecture is never actually complete at the moment it's imagined. To cross the bridge into reality, an architect has to take this multidimensional, emotional, technical experience, something affected by time and weather and light, and somehow just flatten it onto a 2D screen.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the most mind-blowing takeaway from our source material is that an architectural presentation drawing isn't just a pretty picture or a blueprint.
Right.
It is a carefully constructed argument. Every single drawing emphasizes something very specific, and by doing that, it intentionally hides something else.
Which is exactly why we have to separate working drawings from presentation drawings.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Well, working drawings are the messy, internal, behind-the-scenes calculations. They are exploratory and highly technical. But a presentation drawing is an act of translation. It is completely edited for an external audience.
Got it.
The source material points out that these presentation drawings actually serve 4 simultaneous functions. They inform, they interpret, they persuade, and they evoke.
Okay, I want to look at how that actually works mechanically. So let's say you're looking at a drawing of, I don't know, a proposed library sitting in a really dense city block. The drawing informs by showing the literal scale, right? Like the lot lines, the physical footprint.
Exactly. But then the drawing interprets by manipulating visual weight.
Oh, so.
Well, the architect might drop the opacity of the surrounding neighborhood to this faint, maybe 20% gray outline, while rendering the new library in bold, high-contrast black ink.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mechanically, they are forcing your eye to interpret the new building as the absolute protagonist of the site. They suppress the context so the design can actually speak.
And then it persuades by choosing the vantage point. So instead of like an objective bird's eye view, the architect lowers a camera angle to human eye level, framing the entrance so the building feels welcoming but also monumental.
Yes. And finally, it evokes.
Right, but how do you evoke temperature or sound on flat paper?
You use texture and material cues. A soft watercolor wash across a plaza implies a damp, quiet pavement. But hard, sharp vector lines. That implies a sterile, echoing acoustic space. So the architect is pulling all 4 of those levers: inform, interpret, persuade, evoke in one single image.
That is so interesting. It actually makes me think of like trying to explain the plot, the emotion, and the cinematography of an entire movie by only handing someone a few carefully selected still frames.
What's fascinating here is that choosing the right combination of those frames is, in itself, a profound form of design intelligence.
It's not just an afterthought.
Exactly. It's not something you do after the building is designed.
Yeah.
The curated selection of these drawings is precisely how a building is given its public presence.
But that brings us to, I think, a pretty massive point of friction. If these drawings are all subjective translations, what keeps them from just being confusing abstract art? The text points to 2 foundational obligations for any successful architectural drawing, which are clarity and character.
Yes, the twin pillars. And clarity is always the first obligation. A drawing can be visually stunning, but if the viewer can't understand the core ideas, the drawing fails completely.
Right.
It requires visual hierarchy, clean labeling, coherent relationships. And crucially, clarity is not reductive simplification. It can accommodate complexity, but only if it's structured intelligently.
And then there's character, which is like the soul or the mood of the design. A civic building needs strong structure and dignified calm, whereas a playful public pavilion needs a light, dynamic composition. Or a contemplative chapel needs controlled contrast and light.
Exactly.
But wait, let me push back on this, though. Isn't character just a fancy excuse for making a drawing look cool or, like, overly intense?
It's a fair question, and honestly, students make this mistake constantly.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They equate character with visual intensity. They overload their drawings with dramatic stormy skies, aggressive noise, a flock of birds in the background of every single rendering.
Right, trying to make it look edgy.
But true character does not equal visual intensity. True
Mhm.
character actually comes from graphic restraint and aligning the visual language with the actual nature of the design.
So it has to match the building.
Precisely. Character without clarity is obscure, and clarity without character is just lifeless geometry.
So to pull off that perfect balance of clarity and character, an architect has to choose very specific tools from their arsenal. And we transition here from the theory of representation to the actual types of drawings.
Right, because selection is key. You shouldn't show every possible image of a project.
Yeah, you have to pick the right tool, like the orthographic drawings, plans, sections, and elevations. If a project is driven by topography, you need strong sections. But if it's a circulation-driven project, like an airport, you really need plans and diagrams.
Exactly. Diagrams are the conceptual anchors. They basically strip away all the extraneous detail to show the why of a project like zoning or circulation
Yeah.
before they even show the what and how.
And then you have perspectives, which communicate the actual human experience,
Wow.
arrival, light, human occupation. But honestly, I mean, we live in a 3D world, right? Shouldn't architects just rely entirely on 3D perspective drawings to show what it feels like? Like, why not just use VR for everything?
This raises an important question, and it's a danger the text points out specifically. A highly rendered perspective can be incredibly seductive, but it can also hide major flaws.
Oh, wait, really?
Yes, you can create a beautiful, sun-drenched rendering of a lobby that completely masks the fact that the circulation is a disaster, or that there are major material flaws.
So it just looks good on the surface.
Exactly. Perspective should complement architectural reasoning, not substitute it.
Wow, okay. And because perspectives can be that dangerously seductive, this brings us directly to the ethics of architectural persuasion. Because these drawings change based on who is actually being persuaded.
Right. They do. Every drawing depends entirely on the audience. Tutors want conceptual rigor, clients need atmosphere, consultants need technical systems, communities need to see the public impact, and builders need exact documents.
Which opens the door for manipulation. The ethical dilemma here is huge. You can make a project look greener, brighter, more spacious, or like more populated than it actually will be.
You can, but good presentation is truthful persuasion.
Right. It's kind of like using heavy Instagram filters on a dating profile. Like, sure, you might get the date, but eventually someone is going to see the real thing and they are not going to be happy.
That is a perfect analogy, and the text emphasizes that truthful persuasion is a core responsibility. The architect must ask, does this drawing misrepresent scale? Does it imply materials the budget simply can't support?
Because the consequences aren't just aesthetic. If you lie in a drawing, it affects real communities, real city budgets, and real environments.
Exactly. You are bringing out the strengths without distorting reality.
Okay, so we've looked at individual drawings and the ethics behind them, but a presentation is never just one single drawing. We have to look at how all these elements combine into a cohesive physical or, digital layout.
Because a presentation is a narrative.
Right.
It should move logically. You go from concept and context to organizational strategy, then orthographic explanation, experiential perspective, and finally, detail and material resolution.
And the presentation board itself is essentially an architectural composition. If you have a chaotic board with a bunch of competing images, it completely weakens the project.
Absolutely. Consistency and restraint build trust. Whether you're using hand-drawn sketches or digital 3D renders, you need a unified graphic language. Consistent line work, restrained color palettes, careful tonal control.
And what about text?
Text should support, not overwhelm. If you need a giant paragraph to explain the building, your drawings are failing.
So, what does this all mean? For you listening, think about the last time you had to present a complex idea. Maybe you were organizing a slide deck, pitching a strategy, or even structuring a really important report. How did you guide your audience's eyes? The same principles of visual hierarchy, graphic restraint, and truthful persuasion apply to everything.
They really do. And within architecture, an architect's representational style eventually becomes part of their professional identity. But that identity has to emerge from true architectural understanding, not just a passing graphic trend.
Because designing something brilliant is really only half the battle. The other half is communicating it responsibly and compellingly through clarity and character.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, drawings aren't just records. They are the bridge that turns a private vision into a public possibility.
It's an incredible process. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to explore on your own. We've talked so much about how finding a unique character in drawing is central to an architect's identity, how the human hand creates that character. But what happens to the soul of architecture as AI generation, automated software begins standardizing how all buildings are visualized?
Yeah, that is the big question right now.
If you can just click a button and get a flawless, homogenized rendering, does the loss of the human hand mean a loss of architectural character entirely? It's definitely something to ponder.